So, once upon a time in the land of America, in the late 19th century to be exact, the government decided to tackle the big bad monopolies and cartels. It was like a Wild West showdown, but instead of guns, they had laws and regulations. The government was like, "No more charging crazy prices, Mr. Monopoly Man, we've got our eye on you." They rolled out the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, which was like a legal lasso to round up those corporate cowboys. Now picture this, railroads were the big cheese back then, charging whatever they wanted because, hey, they were the only game in town. So the government created the Interstate Commerce Commission, ICC, in 1887, basically a sheriff to keep these rail barons in check. It was the first of many such sheriff commissions. Jump to the era of local telephone companies. Each region had its own telephone fiefdom, and their big boss, the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, AT&T, ruled the long-distance kingdom. The Federal Communications Commission, FCC, was like a referee blowing the whistle on AT&T's pricing plays, while state agencies played mini-referees for local calls. But that's not all. The government also said, let's make it illegal to even think about creating a monopoly. So they passed laws against all sorts of non-competitive shenanigans like price discrimination. It was their way of keeping businesses in line without micromanaging them. Think of it as a traffic cop on the lookout for economic speedsters and lane cutters. Now let's talk about the regulatory commissions. These guys had a straightforward job in theory. Set prices like there's a competition going on. But in practice, oh boy, it was like trying to nail jelly to the wall. Figuring out what these prices should be was trickier than solving a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. Take electricity generation, for example. The cost of lighting up your room at 2 a.m. when you're up for a midnight snack is peanuts compared to firing up your AC on a sweltering summer day. The cost can swing more wildly than Tarzan in the jungle. And the commissioners had to set rates for this roller coaster of costs. When they based rates on average costs, it was like using a one-size-fits-all shirt. Sometimes it's too tight, sometimes too loose. This led to some epic blunders like the California blackouts of 2001. The public, not clued into these economic acrobatics, was understandably miffed when their bills shot up. Politicians, smelling an opportunity, would sometimes jump in and slam price controls like a basketball dunk. But as we've seen time and again, price controls lead to shortages. In this case, blackouts. It's like having a big pizza party but not ordering enough pizza for everyone. Then there's the global stage. In India, trying to hike electricity rates sparked street protests. Political parties, whether in power or opposition, turned these protests into political theater, each trying to outdo the other in the public eye. Back to the US, the regulatory commissions, initially the consumers' knights in shining armor, sometimes ended up as the industry's protective bubble. They started regulating trucking when the truckers began giving the railroads a run for their money. The ICC, initially a railroad watchdog, began covering trucks too. It's like inviting a new player to a board game, but then changing the rules so they can't win. This led to inefficiencies galore. Trucks would have to travel empty on return trips because their certificate didn't allow them to carry goods back. It was like making a round trip to the grocery store, but only being allowed to buy groceries one way. But plot twist, when the government eventually eased off the regulations, costs plummeted and service quality shot up. It turns out that when you let the market play out, things can actually work better. Who knew, right? In conclusion, while the intention behind these regulatory commissions was noble, the execution was often a comedy of errors, with unintended consequences that sometimes flipped the script entirely. It's a tale of good intentions, economic curveballs, and political shenanigans. A real-life economic soap opera. All right, let's break this down with some humor and a casual touch. Antitrust laws, the game of market monopoly. Imagine a game where the goal is to prevent any player from becoming the all-powerful overlord of the board. That's what antitrust laws are in the real world. They were created to stop companies from becoming too powerful and controlling prices like a villain in a superhero movie. Reality check. The underdog becomes the villain. Here's the twist. Most famous antitrust cases in the US weren't about big companies charging high prices. It was actually the opposite. These companies charged lower prices than their competitors, who then ran crying to the government like kids tattling on their siblings. They're being unfair, they'd complain. Competition versus competitors, the confusion. You'd think antitrust laws are about protecting competition, right? Well, it turns out it's more about counting competitors. It's like mistaking the number of players in a game for how competitive the game is. In reality, a truly competitive market often means fewer players as the less efficient ones get booted out. The grocery store saga, A&P takes the heat. Take the A&P grocery chain, for example. They were like the retail Hulk, the largest chain around, but they only controlled a fraction of the grocery market. Yet the Justice Department, armed with antitrust laws, swooped in, accusing A&P of being too tough on the competition because of their low prices. The cost-saving heroes, big stores. Here's where it gets interesting. Large stores like Walmart or Target buy in bulk, which saves costs and resources. It's like buying a jumbo pack of toilet paper instead of single rolls. They get discounts for buying more, which is great for the economy and consumers. But the government often sees this as the big bad wolf squeezing the little pigs. The legal tug-of-war, price discrimination battles. There's been a bunch of cases where companies like Morton Salt or Standard Oil gave discounts to big buyers, and the government slapped them with antitrust actions. It's like penalizing someone for buying a larger pizza because it's cheaper per slice. The bigger picture, efficiency versus fairness. These antitrust actions often focus more on protecting smaller competitors than looking at the overall efficiency and benefits to consumers. It's like ensuring every player gets a turn, even if it slows down the whole game. The global stage, Microsoft and Kodak. Even big names like Microsoft and Kodak weren't immune. Microsoft got into hot water in Europe for bundling its media player with Windows, which was seen as elbowing out other media players. And poor Kodak was sued for trying to protect the quality of its Kodachrome film by processing it themselves. The bottom line, protecting the game, not just the players. The whole antitrust saga is a balancing act. It's about ensuring the market game is fair and competitive without getting too caught up in who's winning or losing at any given moment. It's like playing a board game where you want to make sure everyone has a chance, but you don't want to stop the most skilled player from winning fair and square. Control of the market, the Monopoly Mythbuster edition. Let's dive into the wacky world of market control and antitrust laws with a dash of humor. Monopolies more rare than a unicorn. Genuine monopolies in the American economy are rarer than finding a unicorn at a local zoo. But that didn't stop the legal eagles from getting super creative in labeling companies as monopolies. They even broke up a shoe company, Merger, because the new entity would have had a whopping 7% of the market. Oh, the horror! The market control illusion. There's this popular term in antitrust circles, market control. It's like saying that just because you own the biggest sandcastle on the beach, you control the entire ocean. Reality check. Companies like Pan American Airways and A&P, once seen as market Goliaths, later shrank like a deflated balloon, proving that control is just a fancy word with little substance. Alcoa's aluminum anomaly. Take Alcoa, for instance. It was the only big player in the U.S. aluminum market, but didn't act like a typical monopoly. Their prices went down over time, not up. Why? Because Alcoa knew if they got greedy, people would just switch to other materials. So much for the iron grip of control. The substitution game. Here's a fun fact. Markets aren't isolated islands. If a product gets too pricey, people find alternatives. Like how people switched from newspapers to TV for news, or how high-speed trains in Spain snatched passengers from airlines. It's all about substitutes. In the market, it's like choosing between pizza and burgers. Microsoft and beer, the odd antitrust targets. Microsoft got into hot water for giving away a free internet browser, and the Budweiser brewers were eyed for potentially controlling 46% of the beer market. But hey, there were hundreds of other brewers and operating systems out there. Defining a market too narrowly is like saying you're the best singer in your shower. Technology, the ultimate game changer. The tech world is a great example of how markets evolve. Products that seem totally unrelated can become competitors, like when people started using smartphones as cameras, making life hard for companies like Kodak. Or when corn oil became an alternative to petroleum for making plastics. Golf versus cruises, the economics of substitution. If golf courses double their fees, some people might take up skiing or photography instead. They're not similar activities, but in economic terms, they're substitutes. It's all about how people spend their money, not about the function of the product. Local newspapers and the myth of monopoly. The idea of local newspapers being monopolies is like calling a backyard gardener a farming tycoon. With national newspapers available everywhere, local papers struggled to survive, let alone monopolize anything. The Las Vegas movie chain Misadventure. Here's a quirky case. A movie chain in Las Vegas was prosecuted for having a monopoly on first-run movies. But by the time the case reached the courts, another chain was showing even more first-run movies. That's like being accused of hogging all the pizza when someone else is already eating more slices. The irony of antitrust prosecutions. Often companies are hit with antitrust cases just when they're about to lose their market lead. It's like calling the fire department for a candle that's about to burn out. Historically, the market itself has been quicker in dethroning industry leaders than any legal action. In summary, the whole concept of market control in antitrust laws often misses the dynamic and complex nature of real-world markets. It's like trying to play a game of chess, but only focusing on one piece at a time. The market is a vast ocean of possibilities, substitutions, and ever-changing trends, not just a static playground for the big players. Predatory pricing, the mythical monster of the market. Let's unravel the enigma of predatory pricing in the market, with a sprinkle of humor and a touch of reality. The theory of the market predator? Predatory pricing is like a legend in the antitrust lore. The story goes that a big, bad company slashes its prices to the bone, driving the poor, small competitors into the abyss of bankruptcy. Once the competition is wiped out, this market Goliath then jacks up the prices sky high, making bank at the expense of helpless consumers. Sounds like a classic villain plot, right? The missing evidence? But here's the kicker. Concrete examples of this dastardly strategy are as rare as a unicorn riding a skateboard. Even Gary Becker, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, is like, "Show me the receipts." And yet companies like A&P and Microsoft got the side-eye for supposedly playing this predatory game, A&P with its low grocery prices and Microsoft for bundling a free internet browser. The economics of predatory pricing? Economically speaking, predatory pricing is about as sensible as trying to catch a whale in a fishbowl. A company loses money selling products for less than they cost. Sure, they might drive out a rival, but there's no guarantee they'll ever make back their losses. Plus, antitrust laws are waiting in the wings to slap them with fines or even break them up. The phoenix from the ashes. Even if a company somehow pulls off this predatory plot, competition doesn't just evaporate. For example, when the Washington Post went bankrupt in 1933, not because of predatory pricing, it didn't just disappear. It was scooped up at a bargain price and rose like a phoenix to become a major newspaper. Destroying a competitor doesn't kill competition, it can even pave the way for a stronger rival. The Indian antitrust adventure. Now let's take a quick detour to India. Their anti-monopoly laws were so strict that they practically handcuffed their own industrialists. Big businesses couldn't expand, so they took their ball and investments to other countries. Only when India relaxed these laws in 1991 did things start to look up. Enterprises grew, the economy boomed, and poverty rates dropped. Competition, the real market hero. In the end, it turns out that the real hero of this story is competition. It pushes companies to innovate, cut costs, and up their game.